This part of the lecture is the continuation from the law of Malaysia. So we have explained that federal law is basically laws that are made by the members of parliaments and senators in the Parliament of Malaysia. So federal laws are always what we call acts, okay? So with the parliament, members of parliament, we've mentioned that it's actually chosen by the people, okay, in the 5-yearly elections, okay, and then after that they are sitting in the they are there to make regulations in that sense, okay, and senators are what we call Dewan Negara. So the normal members of the parliaments, they are doing the Dewan Rakyat. So Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the third component of the parliament. So these are the law that is being made by the Parliament of Malaysia. So these are written laws, okay? So they deal with different type of components of the law, for example. Some of these components are actually related. I mean, they're actually overlap with the state ones. Some of it is actually just by themselves, okay? And then you have got one component that are all that can only be done by the federal acts of the parliament, and the other components are actually completely in the hands of the state government. Then you do have some overlapped area, okay? So it is important to know that, in Sabah and Sarawak especially, we do have this customary law as well, and that is also, of course, influenced by the native law. So this one, it cannot be forgotten. So it's not completely English law that we're talking about here. So we do have the passing of the bills does not deal with that components of the law. Okay, so then in the Parliament of Malaysia, any proposed bill needs to be presented, reviewed, and amended in the Dewan Rakyat, which is the House of Representative, and in Dewan Negara, later on in the Dewan Negara, before it becomes a lawful act, okay, with the final consent from the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. This is in accordance with the Constitution of Malaysia. Okay, and for Dewan Negara, basically you're going to have 2 members from each state, and then 2 members from the territory of Kuala Lumpur and Labuan, and then 40 members should be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So this is like a cross-check. You've got the Dewan Rakyat, and this is going to be sort of like cross-checked by the Dewan Negara as well. So basically, our systems here, our system here is, okay, we've got the federal side to make law. We also have the state side to make law. Okay, and basically this they will handle the whole law of all the written laws in that sense. I mean, whatever that comes out is what we call the written law. Okay, and also for the parliament is actually bicameral. Okay, bicameral. So you go and read up on what is bicameral. I'll let you read up on what is bicameral. And then for the state one is unicameral. Okay, so these are we need to understand also all this law that is being made here it will be based according to what is stipulated in the Constitution of Malaysia, which is the supreme law. Okay, so here are the part of it, the qualification and disqualification from the parliament. This one I think you can read on your own. These are about people who can be part of the parliament. These are the procedures in making the federal law. So we've explained that as well. And what sort of legislative power does the federal law have? Okay, and then let's look at the list under the federal jurisdiction. Okay, these are like criminal law, federal law, finance, trade, shipping. These are under the list of federal law, and these are the list of state law. And then this is the overlapping list, the legislations that share the powers to make law in these sort of areas. Okay, and then we also will look at the state law. So all the state has, all the 13 states of Federation of Malaysia has what we call a Dewan Undangan Negeri, which is a state legislative assembly. And this is the state law that is being enacted. So state law are only applicable to that particular the state where the state law is enacted. It doesn't apply to the country. Okay, so different states will have different applicable state law, and these laws are always known as enactments or ordinances. So when you hear about building ordinances, these are actually building laws that are passed in the state for the usage of the state. So you cannot take this law and go to Sabah. You cannot take this law and go to KL, or go to Malacca or JB. They will have their own building ordinances, which developers and engineers need to follow accordingly. If we say Engineers Act, so Engineer Act is a law that is passed by the bills that are passed by the federal law. So this is pertaining to all the engineers in the entire Malaysia. But if we talk about ordinances, when you hear enactments and ordinances, these are especially Sarawak, we are known as ordinances. So this will be passed by the this will be passed by the at the end of the day it will be like the Sultan and also the Yang di-Pertua Negeri. Okay, our what we call TYT. Okay, so this is a little bit different. This is actually based on the state alone. So the state legislative assemblies are also like being chosen by the by the people. So every few years we do have our state election, and then from the state election, it will be led by, there'll be few parties, fighting to get the seats, and then the parties with the most majority party will usually be chosen as the chief minister or the state of the state. So Ketua Menteri or Menteri Besar of the state. Okay, so you see that this sort of things is actually not very good, because it means that whoever the party that constantly wins, when you can have a government and chief minister from the same parties all the time. So it may not be exactly healthy. So this sort of way of election is actually very British kind of way. So prime ministers are usually from the parties that have the most majority as well. You see, so then it becomes very, very powerful, and the balance of check and balance is a little bit difficult to handle when you have the chief minister from one particular party only, you see, and then there's going to be some conflicts here, I am sure. It's not so simple, you see. So not everybody can be so non-conflict kind of thing. My interest is based on the party. I need the support of my party to become the chief ministers. So whatever my party says, the members of the party says, it will affect the chief ministers, and then the chief minister's power, when, it's led, he's a leading person, you see. So a lot of the decision that he makes and all that will be actually affected by the party's decision. And that is not really what we call a very transparent and a very fair and just kind of system in a sense, because not everybody can be so straight and forthright and so based to the interest of the state. You see, so these are some of the issues that we do have. So all state constitution must have the standard principles of guidelines to secure the uniformity. So the advice from the chief ministers, the ruler, the sultan, the Yang di-Pertua Negeri, will be given absolute authority to dissolve the legislative assembly in those states, and then within 60 days they have to carry out election. Okay, so you can see which states has governor, which is the Yang di-Pertua Negeri, which state have ruler, which is the sultan, and so that it goes from there. So states that comprises of sultan, okay, will be elected based on the maximum of 5 years term. Then the one that is actually the appointment of a state executive council will be by the Yang di-Pertua Negeri among the elective member. So they are like the senators role, but they don't call themselves senators, so it's called the state executive council. Okay, so the sultan will appoint the chief minister as the head of the state of executive council. So it's like the CEO, the Argon. Not the Argon, the TYT and the chief minister. The TYT and the sultan will actually appoint a CEO for the state kind of thing. So that one would be the chief minister. So